Welcome to the Heroes of Change interview series, and it's my pleasure to have on the line here Jill Morganthaler from Illinois, USA. Morning, Jill.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Chris.
I really appreciate it. Jill and I met 6 or so months ago at the Global Speakers Conference here in Auckland. Jill, just when I say to you, if I said to you, change your thinking, change your life, what stories and gongs are going off in your head?
One of the biggest changes in my life, I was running Homeland Security for Illinois, and I loved the job. And I was leading all kind of agencies, and I'm under the assumption most of the time you do a good job and you get what you deserve. Well, the governor of Illinois was sent to prison, and I was fired, and I was tainted along with the rest of the staff of being guilty, and I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get a job interview. And so my life just came to an abrupt halt. And that's when I realized, well, I could have that pity party at home every day. Life's unfair. Or I can realize, okay, I am meant to do something else. And that's the attitude I grabbed onto. It gave me an opportunity to write my book. It gave me a chance to really build up my speaking skills. People kept asking me to speak. And I'm like, okay, why am I fighting this? Why do I want a 9-to-5 job when I can go to New Zealand and speak? So I just embraced it. And I think in life, we're meant to reinvent ourselves periodically, whether it's after high school, after college, sometime in your 50s or your 60s. So instead of, having this devastating ego thing, you just say, okay, great. What's next? When I first joined in the Army, I was a part of an experiment of women serving with men. And some days were just so frustrating because men kept trying to stop me from doing my job. And that just seemed so stupid. I'm smart, I'm fit, let me do my job. And then other days, I just wanted to hide. I would walk out and men wouldn't salute me. And then I'd have to make a scene, and I didn't want to. I just wanted to stay in this dark corner. But fortunately, I realized that wasn't the solution. I was going to just have to be much more of an extrovert than I was, and much more project confidence, even though I didn't feel it. I was going to have to act like it anyway, fake it till you make it. And so some of those days were real dark, and yet I'm a far better person because I went through that. And, once you get older, the one thing I wish I knew, Chris, then that I know now is when people attack you, it's often about them. I wish I had known that when they would tell me how useless I was or incompetent or whatever. Oh, that's how you feel about yourself. Okay, gotcha.
If I remember rightly, you're a fourth generation server in the military in your family. Is that right?
At least fourth. Come
Right.
from, a long line of soldiers and Marines on both sides of the family. So yeah, my father was thrilled when I followed his footsteps. He was a Marine officer, and my
Yeah.
brother wasn't going to. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, I will. Both my parents were athletes. I really wasn't. I mean, physically fit, but I was never the athlete. Both of them were captains of their teams. And so they really had that attitude of quitting is not an option. And so I was raised with that. I could not, once I signed up for something, I was not allowed to quit it. I had to get through it. And so going into the military, you know, taking away that option of quitting, trying to get out of it, really helped me go, okay, then if quitting's not an option, then how do I fix this? Both my parents raised me with, you're smart, you can do anything you want. And so having that attitude, and not all young women were raised with that from their parents, but having that attitude, I am smart, I can figure this out. And then the other attitude is being contrary. When someone tell me I couldn't do something, I shouldn't, then it was like, oh, now I'm going to do it better than you. So very competitive when someone would get contrary. That's like, oh,
Yeah.
you guys don't know what you've just done.
So I'm interested in your values world, Jill, and your values system. And when you're growing up, Do you believe the values that you're born about, does that influence your courage and your capacity to make changes in your life?
You know, one thing I was raised with, Chris, especially from my mother, was watch out for the underdog. Now, I was the oldest of 4 children, so I was put in charge. I was kind of the sergeant of the family, barking the orders, whether I wanted to or not. But it was always watch out for the underdog, which I didn't realize it, but it also subtly told me I'm not the underdog. I'm watching out for someone else. And that paid off because in the Army in the 70s, there was so much racism. It was horrible. And so I was looking out for the black soldiers as much as the white soldiers. And then they were turning around without me knowing they were watching my back. Um, there was one young woman who's so mad at me because I used to make her do her job. She'd flip her hair and most of the men would jump in and do her work. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. Get your job done. And she started spreading rumors that I was an alcoholic and it could have ended my career. But fortunately, it was black soldiers who actually came to me and said, ma'am, you need to know what's being said about you. And so I was able to squash it. And I thought, wow, because I was watching out for them, they did watch out for me. So that whole take care of the underdog, to me, it's the right thing to do, and there's benefits to doing it.
Do you see any inspirational figures out there that you connect with and admire and who've made the transition and shift and change?
My priest is actually going through a transition from female to male, which is a huge societal change. And I just watch the courage as he goes through this. He could have hidden his true self all this time, and he chose not to. And he knows he could face all kinds of pushback. I'm glad to say no pushback from our church or from my diocese or anything. But to me, that is huge courage. And it also shows a confusion about identity that was there so long and so painful. And now he's actually fixing it and not going to die with it. And the cool thing is his spouse is totally on board. And I asked Katie, I said, Katie, how do you feel about this? Same person I've always loved. I'm like, wow, that's powerful. We do have a lot of young people still confused, and when they hurt themselves over it or kill themselves over it, people like my minister are providing hope of, look, you'll figure it out and you'll take what steps you need to.
Sometimes it's anchoring your belief that your story will inspire and release others from their shackles. We can anchor ourselves in our pure belief that this will shift thinking in our audiences.
I like that term, shift the thinking, because I mean, when people are bringing me in, it's because they either bring me in for leadership or empowerment, and so there are obviously something's missing there. And so and I do like that because, and that's what I do reflect on is how many people come up afterwards and said, I really needed to hear your message. So I need to remind myself, look, more people really need to hear my message.
Do you see another sort of change point, a transition or another step on your journey ahead? What would that be, do you think?
Well, one thing, I'm going to do a shameless plug. My book. I'm trying to sell my stories to Hollywood. I saved an American engineer from being kidnapped in Berlin. So I'm actually shipping out my book today with a bottle of wine to a woman producer in Hollywood. I got her email. I got her real address. So I'm going to say, enjoy the wine. I hope you open the book. Yeah. And then, and so I'm just trying to see it. Somebody has supposedly given the book to Kevin Bacon. I haven't heard a word, so I have no idea. But, you know, the stories are great. And they keep saying we want more movies about strong women. Well, yoo-hoo. And then I could be that celebrity speaker, you know, where do less speeches, make a lot more money. Cool. Sounds good to me. Like I said, I'm just going to keep, that's just kind of one of my side things I do a little bit every day because I don't know, I see it happening. So I'm not going to give up.
Just briefly on Me Too, what's your take on that movement over the last 6-8 months?
We really need the movement. I mean, there are people who think we solved this in the last century, and obviously we haven't. And there's a lot of things that have been hidden. A lot of people have looked away. And then some women say, well, there's going to be a pushback and payback. You know, stop that language because we need to keep going forward. If there's a little pushback, then we just push harder. good thing is young women are realizing, oh my gosh, it's still out there, and this is not acceptable. So I love seeing the fight. I had that fight when I was in the Army, and the higher rank I got, the less fighting I had to do. The name calling I went through, even as an officer, they go, oh, a woman in uniform, are you a butch, a bitch, a bimbo? And it's like, I'm a U.S. Army officer. And then they'd shut up. It's way about time. It's way over time. And I'm glad it's an international movement, because in America, we have things much, much better than what I saw when I was stationed in the Middle East or Asia.
What would you like to be instrumental in to create change?
And to me, it's, could we just all treat each other,
Mm,
regardless of gender,
mm,
persuasion,
mm,
nationality, creed, whatever? Could we all just
yeah,
treat each other with the respect that each one of us
mm,
deserves? Do unto others as you do unto yourself. I mean, that would be, if I could do that major change, I'd be sanctified.
mm. If you had one piece of sage advice from your travels for those, resisting change, what do you think that would be?
Just try it. Have the courage.
Mm,
If it doesn't work out, it didn't work out.
mm.
But it could take you places you never dreamed of.
You're an absolute figurehead and inspiration for women. I know you are. And I'm going to show this interview to my wife, if that's okay.
Oh,
And
of course.
I'm going to show it to my daughters as well. I've got 4 daughters.
Men help raise strong women. And it's great you realize that.
Mm, mm,
I don't think a lot of people give themselves the full credit of what an impact they have on their children.
mm, mm. Okay, Jill. Thanks so much now.
Thank you,
All
Chris.
right.
Take care.
Bye for now.